that I have these latches all ground smooth and looking nice, I left these door hinges all loose so that I could play around with this and not have to adjust and tighten and loosen and keep messing with it. So by using this pin and the new claw, I was able to adjust this body line. This is the most critical line here, as well as the position so it lines up this way. So I wasn't really concerned about how the rest of this all fit. Now that I have this exact, I want to mount these hinges correctly and get them positioned so that I can get all these gaps exactly the way I want them. And then this gap on the bottom here is too wide. This area is too wide. So I want to get all of that adjusted and then figure out where I need to weld on. I need to add a little bit maybe to the door, or maybe I need to split this and bend up the bottom. Those are some options. So I'll start by mounting on these hinges, getting that adjusted as best as possible, and we'll go from there. The hinges that are mounted to the body don't have a whole lot of adjustment. I can go up and down a little bit, but not a whole lot. The door to go in and out this way has quite a bit of an adjustment, but very little this way. So I'll start with that. It's really tight right here, and it's perfect gap up here. So I need to bring this way up in order to pull this over. And there's a big gap here, so if I can get it to come up, that'll fix the issue, but it just doesn't move. Whether I have to oval out holes or whatever I need to do, I've got to get this up as high as possible. Bringing it up as high as I can on the actual door where it mounts. Move back. So I can adjust this gap. It's looking good. I'm really tight right here still. This is a really wide gap. This is acceptable at this point. Yeah, I can work with this gap. This is really tight. It's actually hitting, because this gap is perfect. Alright, looks like I've got my work cut out for me on this side. So this is the best I can do when it comes to this edge gap. I am going to have to do some surgery there. This is fairly smooth. In fact, it's perfect here in the middle. It's out too far here, in too far here. You're looking at a good 1/4 of an inch down here, but yet it is dead on right here. And it is acceptable all the way down. So I have to do surgery here. Since the windshield and the trim mounts here, and the body style, the way all this is in the cowl, for me to push this in doesn't make sense. So I need to pull this out. So the only thing I'm going to be able to do is to somehow jack this door out in this distance. 1/4 of an inch. So that's a big difference. And that's a large amount that I'm going to have to bring it out. So I'm going to start with just getting out the bigger hammer. And I'm going to weld on the back side of this, because it's just the wrong shape. Got some tools to abuse. Wow, that actually worked. And I didn't distort the face of the door either. when you're working with a radiused edge like this, my straight edge isn't going to work because it's rocking on it. So I like to get something that's more flexible, but yet stiff enough that it's not distorted, and put it across an area like this. It's just a little bit low right here, so I can bring it out a little bit more, tap it out. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch off, so that's great. And then as I go all the way down, from here to here, it's smooth. Across the middle, it's about a 1/16 dive, which is pretty common on stampings on old cars. When I did my Buick, all the gaps dove in about a 1/16 of an inch. You just fill across them with your filler, and you use a big long sanding board and you sand across them, and you just end up with a little bit thicker of an edge on the door. Or you just tap that edge out along the end of it from the back side. You bring it out just a hair, and then you might still have a dive along this edge, but it's very acceptable if you're just doing, I mean, even thick primer will take care of that, so that when you look down the side of it, it is just laser straight. It's perfectly acceptable to just leave it. I mean, that's the way they were from the manufacturer. That's the way all the cars were back then. But when you're dealing with a darker color and a show quality finish, why not just go that extra little bit and make them absolutely flat all the way across. So I just skim coat this whole thing with filler, sand it all down smooth, give it a thick coat of sanding primer, and you can just make this laser straight. I am filling a high spot right here because it got bumped right here. Pretty good crease right here. It's pushed in about a 1/2 inch. So when I pull that out, I'm hoping this will suck in because it pushed up here and pushed out here. So I'm hoping I can push that in. But from here over it's good, so it's just a high spot. But yeah, this is exciting. I still have a huge gap here. And I think I've got this where I can tap it over a little bit, and this is going to be acceptable gap here and here. So I'll sand this back just a little bit, sand this finish off. I'll take a hammer and just kind of lightly pull this together so that it's just a real tight edge. I can make that work. This all looks really good. I can do the same thing here. I can make this work. This gap, I can stick my little finger in there. This gap is huge. So there's two ways of doing it. I can split this open, bring it up, and re-weld it. But then again, we're back to 2 factory seams. So then it's just a matter of extending this bottom edge of the door. And I have a big gap on both of these. So that's my plan, is I'm going to add a piece of wire all along this edge that I can weld on, and then grind it back off and grind and smoothen both edges of that crimped edge, and then I can close this gap up. So it's going to have to be a pretty good sized rod that I can weld on. Since this line isn't exactly straight, it goes like this, this being a high point, really closing up and making that gap tight. I'm going to see if I can tap this edge over. I know this is pretty tough right here, so I'll have to be careful. I don't want to bulge it out. So I'm not hitting it very hard, just enough to kind of massage it. Oh wow, that's beautiful. It did pop out a little bit on me. See if I can just tap it in without closing that gap back up. That's beautiful. Excellent gap. Man, this is coming along. I didn't think this was going to be that easy. So now I'm running into the door is twisted. It's in like this. I need to bring the bottom corner out. So the only thing you can do is rack the whole door. So what I did is I jammed a bar in the back side of this. So this is staying where I want it. Now it's latched, it's smooth here and it's sticking out here. But I just want to take some of the memory out of it. Pretty close. And the door skin and the fender skin are perfectly aligned, but I've got a big dive right here again, where it just, the two edges just really come together. So I'm going to tap this edge up just a little bit more. I'm going to bring it out a little bit beyond the fender, and then I can just run a thin amount of filler along the edge of the fender to meet the door. I don't want to thicken up the edge of the door, so if I just filled across this, I could make it beautiful, but this door edge will get thicker. And then when you open the door, you bump it into something, you can chip that edge off. So I want a good solid edge. That looks so nice. And it stayed flat. I still have 3 dents along here to fill, but I didn't make it worse. So smooth. The hinges are tight. The latch, listen to this. Just so much better than the factory. This is exciting. So really, all I got left to do now, weld over some of these holes, weld over this hole, fix those dents, and then weld a rod all along this bottom edge. This gap is really exciting. I'm making measurements as to how far I want this rod. It needs to come to about here. And as I'm looking at this, how tight it is, I'm going to take a chance that I can tap this over. And hopefully I don't open this up too much and bulge it out. This is actually working. I've moved around to the other side. Now, getting this door, I'm finding pretty much the same issue. It's kind of interesting. This is pushed out. I can't imagine what got inside of here and pushed this out. It's pretty easy to tap that back in. This was in a little bit, like the other side. Got in the inside and pushed it out. This is in, this is out. So the whole door needs to be twisted again. And I'm starting to think that maybe from all the years of slamming the door, that this has moved in a little bit on both sides, because I've had to really rack both doors. This one's much worse than that side. This is in about 3/8 of an inch, which really leads me to believe that this has been pushed in. So I need to bring it out. At the same time I push the door in, I'm going to try not to kink this door, because you can push them too far. Normally I wouldn't do something like this with glass and everything out of it, but this doesn't have any. It just has a little wing window here. Speaking of wing windows, I'm noticing there's cracks in the door on both sides, worse on that side than on this side. So every time you'd slam the door and that wing window kicking out, the metal is all cracked and fatigued. So I'm going to have to reinforce that, but definitely something to look for when you're doing a project like this. So one of the things that I want to try on this side, since I'm suspecting this is pushed in, I'm going to see if I can bring them both together. So maybe I'll push this out, and maybe I'll push this in at the same time. This is one of those things you just kind of have to do trial and error. Keep an eye on it so I don't kink the door. Didn't move much, maybe 1/8 of an inch, so I'm still a 1/4 inch off. I'll just keep playing with it. I'll just keep pushing it together, pushing this out. I may, since that side's off too, I may just put a ram in between both of these sides and push these out. I'll experiment for a minute. We'll see what happens. I jammed my extension bar, my hydraulic press bar, from that corner up to this corner, and that instantly went away. So this is definitely in. It needs to come out. It's got a lot of memory in it right now, so as soon as I release it, it just goes back. So I'm going to have to take it out beyond where this is really sticking out, and then release it and release it and release it until I get it to the point where it's lost that memory, it's got a new memory, and it stays where it's supposed to be put. About 1/2 inch out now. I can see it's actually bowing out the side. It's not affecting the other side because I'm going diagonally. I'm just going to have to experiment with it to get it to stay put. So as you can see, once I get this ram in place, I put just enough pressure on the inside of this that that door lines right up. It's still off about 1/8 of an inch, but it's pretty close. But as soon as I pull that out, it goes right back. So I'm going to take it way out beyond where it needs to be, where it's starting to creak and pop and make a lot of noise. And then I'll tap on the inside of it to see if I can relieve some of the memory and get that to stay out. So that is about 1/2 an inch out. Now hopefully when I release it, it will stay put. You can see here, this is where that brace I put across to that pillar, and then with that jack handle, just diagonally push that corner up. So here's a close-up of how far off it is. It's hard to tell on this ruler, but it's 1/4 of an inch off to the inside. So I will jack it out, and hopefully I can get that to stay out. It's close. It came out probably 1/8 of an inch. I need to come out another 1/8. I'm still a long ways off. It's scary to push something like this, especially when it's not mounted to the frame. I mean, I've got it set level on the ground, so I've got to really watch to make sure I don't rack this body, but it's pretty rigid, and since it's all factory steel and there hasn't been any floors welded in or rockers welded in, as long as I'm careful, I shouldn't rack it. Nailed it. That's cool. I've got to bring this bottom lip out a little bit, and then I got to weld on an extension because it's got a big, huge gap in here again that I can stick my fingers through. That's a huge relief. I can't live with things that don't line up, and I don't want to buckle anything trying to make it right. So, for now, I'm going to call it quits. Like I say, I need to weld an extension on the bottom of both doors, and I need to play with this gap just a little bit more before I pop this door off. I just need to raise it a hair, close this gap up a hair, and we'll bring this over a hair. I'm going to tap this back a little bit like I did on the other side. So that's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps people that are learning how to do this body work. It's been a lot of years of knowledge to learn the things that I have, and I'm just really happy to be able to share it here on YouTube. Thanks again. Goodbye for now.